We gather together at this time and in this place made sacred by the love of the generations, of all those who have worshiped here, who have welcomed new lives here, celebrated marriages here, remembered dear ones here. We gather in this place made sacred by love, and from this place, wherever we are, made sacred by love for this time of finding, if we need comfort, finding inspiration, if it is inspiration we need. In any case, to be inspired by the generations that have come before, our dear ones and many others, generation to generation, as we worship on this ancestral land of the Massachusetts people, generations without end. Inspired may we be to bring our gifts of life and of love, our legacies, to this place, this time, to our lives, and to all life.
May your life be as a song, resounding with the dawn, to sing awake the night, and softly serenade the stars, ever dancing circles in the night.
Chalice lighter this morning, chalice lighting words from Elaine. All the participants this morning are members of our pastoral care team who created this service together. Thank you, Elaine.
I speak today of loss and of grief. When we lose someone, we miss them completely. We grieve the whole person, their eyes, their hands, their smile, what made them great, what made them unique, but also what we didn't like, what drove you crazy about them. That is weird, but it's true. We miss that too. They are so utterly gone from this world and forever. So we are comforted by one of the great lessons of grief, that you don't have to be perfect to be loved. You don't have to be perfect to be missed. You don't have to be perfect, period. So we light this chalice today in gratitude for the strange gift of grief, its essential truth, and its possibilities.
Thank you, Elaine. Just beautiful. Our chalice burns for all of that in that spirit. Our opening hymn is number 311. You can follow along in your hymn books if you like. Follow along quietly, perhaps humming a bit. Let it be a dance, the dance of life, number 311.
and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Morning star comes out at night. Without the dawn there is no light. If nothing's wrong, then nothing's right. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let the sunshine, let it rain. Share the laughter, hear the pain. And round we go again. Let it be a dance.
Thank you, and I could feel you all singing. Good morning, and a warm welcome to worship at and from our Old Ship Meeting House, and welcome to old timers and newcomers as well. If you are new, we would look forward to getting to know you, and if you like, we invite you to stand up, keeping your mask on, and tell us who you are, if you're comfortable with that. We'd love to meet anyone who's new. Well, we do look forward to meeting you following the service. We'll have our time of refreshing conversations, though not refreshments, outside. It looks like it's turning into a beautiful day. And on Zoom, folks can stay in the Zoom room for coffee, if they have it, or tea, or whatever they're having to refresh themselves, and conversation in the Zoom room. Also, after the service, those who are here are invited to take a walk around to the other side of the meeting house behind me to our memorial garden, where members of our memorial garden committee will show you the garden, the fountain, which is now closed for the year, but you can see the beauty of it, and of the space where dear ones are remembered and honored. And when you leave the meeting house, if you're at all uncertain with your steps, remember there is our beautiful garden ramp going out on this side. No steps whatsoever. We do have a few announcements for upcoming events. This Wednesday, as most of you know, there is an important parish meeting. There'll be a vote on continuing to make efforts to sell the parish house and build here across the street, down the hillside here. So that's at 7 o'clock, both in person in the parish house and on Zoom. And the weekend coming up on Saturday, I'll be teaching a class from aging to saging, the first of 2 Saturdays with a break in between. A Saturday morning, there's a book by that title. You don't have to read the book, but it's about reflecting on what it means to grow older. We are all growing older, whatever age we are. Particular emphasis on the later stages of our life. So I hope, let me know if you'd like to be part of that. Again, in person, in that case too, and also on Zoom. And finally, for announcements, next Sunday from 10 to 2, so if you're attending worship, there's plenty of time afterwards, our youth are leading a Bikes Not Bombs bike drive. Great organization, you can look it up. And every now and then we have helped them to collect old bikes and bike equipment. I've got an old Peugeot bike from my college years that I'm ready to finally let go of. I'll be bringing it in, and others are welcome to do the same. They do good work, both here in this nation and abroad. Bikes Not Bombs, next Sunday, 10 to 2. Our time of candles, sharing joys, sorrows, and concerns. Carol Schuler has asked for a candle for friends of hers and of many at Old Ship. Deb Scott and her husband, Blake Haskell, they both died of COVID recently on October 7th and earlier September 29th. We light that candle in remembrance of Deb and Blake. I invite your sharing on chat if you're on Zoom, and here in this room of any additional joys, sorrows, or concerns. Of course, later we'll have time to share our remembrances of dear ones who've died during this last year or before. But now, any other joys, sorrows, or concerns. If you're in this room, please stand or be recognized with a show of a hand, and we will hear you. Yes, Derek.
Candle for all the dispossessed in the world, through religion, politics, whatever. Especially the children that are going to live without messing around with climate change. That's the only way I can put it.
Thank you, Derek. Candle for all the dispossessed in the world, for whatever reason, politics, religion, COVID, climate change, especially for the children. We light this candle. Thank you. Others? Daveline, are there any in chat that you can see?
There are no joys or concerns in chat this morning.
No doubt we have joys, sorrows, or concerns in our hearts, in our lives. And for those, though unspoken among us, I light these candles. Oh, someone else. Yes, Sanchez, go ahead. A candle of joy. We don't. Yeah. A candle of joy for having gone to the movies for the first time in a long time, and particularly for the movie Across the Street, French Dispatch, which you herald for its artistry and power. Thank you. One of these candles in my heart is for all those gathering in Glasgow and all those they represent in this COP26 climate change summit. Couldn't be more important at this time. We are invited to sing quietly, sort of under your breath, Spirit of Life, as we prepare our hearts and minds to share the names of those we have loved, we have lost. And will lead us in the responsive reading, we remember them. Your response is simply, we remember them, and I do invite you to speak it quietly in the course of the reading. Carol, thank you.
Good morning. In the rising of the sun and its going down,
We remember them.
in the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter,
We remember them.
in the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring,
We remember them.
in the blueness of the sky and the warmth of summer,
We remember them.
in the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn,
We remember them.
in the beginning of the year and when it ends,
We remember them.
when we are weary and in need of strength,
We remember them.
when we are lost and sick at heart,
We remember them.
when we have joys we yearn to share,
We remember them.
So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us as
we remember them. Thank you, Carol. As we do each year at about this time, this year on All Hallows Eve, All Souls Eve, we remember those among us who have died. First, remembering those in our congregation, members and dear friends. And then, as we name others in this room or on chat, we're invited to show a photo on the Zoom room, or if you brought something with you to come here. I've got photos of my parents and grandparents already, if you have anything. But we begin with our members and friends, holding in our hearts those with whom we have shared our hearts, our lives. Ralph, we need to backtrack on the screen. Remember, as Ralph screen shares for the Zoomers and Jeff here, remember Harriet Caton. Oh, yes. Angela and Nigel Harvey. Chuck Malmy. Tom Marks. Dick Murphy. Paula Poses. John Price. Russell Robinson. Stephen Tooker. And Kitty Ward. And for these and those we will name now and for which Joan will continue to place stones, I will light our candle of remembrance. I invite you now to name anyone in your own life who has died during this past year to begin with. Just say it out, and Joan, when she hears it, will place one of the stones. And meanwhile, on chat, you may be typing in dear ones as well. Bill Weinstock. Nicholas Gagliardo. Jackie Eaton. Rachel Bloom. Touching Ralph and Richard Stevens. And you may bring, as Laura is now, bring a photograph if you have one or another memento of a dear one. Of course, you can retrieve it following the service. Anyone else? And now we may add, if you like, add those who've died in many years past. And I've already mentioned my parents, Helen and Lowell, my grandparents, Grandpa and Grandma. Please name any others. Yes. Betsy Robinson. Your brother, Grant Joshua and Seth. John Raphael. Tom Potter. And Christina Ward. And Joe Simmons. Patrick Butler and Walter McGinnis. I invite you now all together. Anyone else, just name all at once who's in your heart this morning. And Bob Shepard. Dang. And Dave Aline, would you like to repeat any who've been named in chat?
Whoops. Yes, Ken, we have several in chat. First of all, from Abby, her parents, Betty Lou and Harvey, and her sister Beth. From me and Mary Thomas, Hal Thomas. From me, my parents, Leonard and Colleen Cooper. And from Paul Stone, his sister, Doris Benjamin. And that's all in the chat.
Thank you. We hold everyone who mourns, however many years of mourning, in our hearts. Thank you, Joan. Now we sing any of our youth who are here. I think I saw one or two. Perhaps the others are already across the street. We sing you out with Go Now in Peace for your celebration of the Day of the Dead across the street. And we join our hearts and minds in the spirit of meditation, prayer, and silence. On this day of sacred remembrance, All Souls Eve, we have brought to mind those who have never been far from our thoughts or from our hearts, even though gone from our sides. May we carry their legacies of love and struggle, learning from their foibles or shortcomings, learning from gifts we've received. May we carry their legacies into our lives, into the lives of those around us. Indeed, carrying lessons learned from times they may have fallen short, carrying these lessons into our lives and the lives of those around us. And on this day of remembrance, may we strive, as we always do, to live so that those who follow us may be moved to deeper love and wider sympathy. Strive to live and love in ways that support the flourishing of all life. In these shared moments of prayerful silence, we also hold in our hearts many among us who have sorrow or joy or concern this morning, spoken or unspoken. We pray for one another. We pray for our community, for our nation. We pray for the world. We pray for all beings on this, our earth home. As we enter a time of silence, may it be peaceful. May it be renewing to our spirits. Before sharing our offering, I would invite Fan Leonard to come forward to read May Sarton's poem, All Souls. Thank you, Fan.
This is a poem by May Sarton. It's called All Souls. Did someone say there would be an end? An end, oh, an end to love and mourning? What has been so interwoven cannot be unraveled, nor the gift ungiven. Now the dead move through all of us, still glowing. Mother and child, lover and lover, mated, are wound and bound together and enflowing. What has been plaited cannot be unplaited. Only the strands grow richer with each loss, and memory makes kings and queens of all of us. Dark into light, light into darkness, spin. When all the birds have flown to some real haven, we who find shelter in the warmth within, listen and feel new cherished, new forgiven, the lost human voices through us, and blend our complex love, our mourning without end.
Thank you, Fan. Beautifully read, unsurprisingly. Our morning offering, if you're here in the meeting house, may be placed in a basket at either of these two exits as you leave. And whether you're in the meeting house or elsewhere, we may always donate to our ministries through the donate link on our website. And there you can give to our Sunday plate offering, as well as to our monthly special plate offering. This month, as most of you know, is being given to the International Institute of New England, particularly to help the resettlement of Afghan refugees in Massachusetts. What could be more timely? And we thank as well any of you who've remembered to bring food or who will remember in future weeks to bring food for our food pantry, which you can leave in the vestibule. A morning offering will now be given and received and our offertory appreciated. all things must pass. Does that mean mourning without end? There's a story told of a great king who owned a particularly beautiful, precious diamond. But there was a small flaw right at its very heart. You can only see it in certain light, but still it distressed the king, no doubt a perfectionist, as I expect a lot of kings are. Just a small flaw, distressing to him. But in the end, a solution was offered by a humble jeweler who, instead of trying to erase the flaw somehow, etched so carefully, etched a tiny rosebud on the diamond with the flaw serving as the stem. Everybody agreed that, if anything, the diamond may have become more beautiful. I came across that story years ago in a book on grief. The story is meant to suggest that even in our most searing pain, the pain we feel when someone quite dear to us has died, someone we've loved beyond words, a pain that we might well think of as representing a deep flaw in the creation. How could it be? It's not fair. Who hasn't said those words? But the story is suggesting that even in the midst of, or at some point along the way, the story suggests that with work, patience, and time, our lives might become more beautiful again. In fact, we may come to realize we were never not beautiful. Now, it's a beauty that cannot ever justify a loss, and it's a beauty we may not be able to envision, probably can't, within the first throes of grief. But given the irretrievable fact of the loss, it's a beauty that may eventually have redeeming power for us. But no one ought to say it's an easy journey to that redemptive beauty. Hardly. It can be searingly hard, maybe impossible to begin with, to even imagine such a possibility. Imagine could ever be otherwise than how hard it is at the moment. We all, here in the meeting house, on Zoom, have experienced grief, will grieve, are grieving. It's universal. We've grieved, mourned for, as we heard this morning, for dear friends of all ages, for parents, grandparents, spouses, partners in life, children. The hardest loss of all, as some in our congregation know only too well. Collectively these days, of course, we share the grief, and some of us have experienced it personally, the grief of the losses from COVID. We heard the first candle this morning of COVID loss. COVID, which continues to accumulate in our communities around the planet. Grief. Yet though we share the experience of grief as in general, we've all grieved, each of us experiences grief uniquely, of course. Grief with its panoply of feelings different for each of us. Sadness, maybe numbness, sometimes anger, and it could be so. Sometimes, maybe often, regrets, what we said or didn't say, did or didn't do, and now we can't make up. This said, the very experience of grief as unique, the way we feel it, is itself paradoxically universal. I often quote the words of Helen Keller at this service. She wrote, "We bereaved are not alone. We belong to the largest company in the world," she said, "the company of those who have known suffering, the great family of the heavy-hearted into which our grief has given us entrance." Then she goes on to say that if we allow ourselves to experience this welcome into the largest family of all, we may feel invisibly but real the arms of compassion, compassionate arms around us of others who have known their own grief, their own suffering. All this said, as our inevitable losses accumulate with the years, one and then another and another. We might well ask, are we doomed to ever deeper and more painful grief and mourning without end? Deeper and more painful with the years? I would say no. We may think the answer is yes, since as we grow older, unless we've shielded ourselves from human relationships altogether, we will accumulate losses in the ordinary course of things, which is not universal by any means. Grandparents and parents, then contemporaries, we accumulate these losses. How could our mourning not become deeper as we grieve again and again and again? Know that first stab of pain, perhaps in some sense, the mourning without end of May Sarton's poem. But the answer actually is no, not necessarily ever deeper, ever more painful, I should say, because I don't believe we will inevitably become mired. We won't inevitably become mired in darkening corners of grief, stuck forever in the despair we might quite naturally sometimes feel. What could be more human? I say this partly based on my own experience, yet also seeing you and others I know who have lived through and beyond, who seem not beaten by their losses, maybe at first, but not beaten, rather deepened. It seems like a miracle sometimes. How could they do it? Not beaten, but deepened over time. Nothing mystical here, I don't think. Rather human. Quite human, if something sometimes really hard, but human. How do we avoid being beaten and instead arrive at some deepening of our soul through mourning? It might be pretty straightforward, which isn't to say easy, not at all. Allow ourselves to grieve fully. As the old saying goes, the only way through is through. Much as we might resist, and we do sometimes. To allow ourselves to feel all the feelings, to know that the journey will have its twists and turns, its ups and downs. We think we're done, and then it swings back at us. The only way through is through. To closure, no such thing. We will always miss somewhere in our hearts and in our lives the dear one or friend who walked with us. We'll always miss them. We should never, no reason why we should stop missing them. Acceptance, that fabled nirvana at the end of the so-called stages of grief. Well, if acceptance means anything, it surely does not mean accepting that some difficult loss was actually okay, an untimely loss or a loss that included surely too much suffering. Acceptance doesn't mean saying, oh, actually it was okay, because it wasn't. But it does mean, if it means anything, accepting that this happened, because it did. However out of the order of things it may have been. Might take a long time, but we learn to understand, not just in our heads, but in our hearts, that the clock can't be turned back. Our life as we knew it has changed. And we learn too that life goes on. Here we are. Life is going on with those we loved, who've gone now in our hearts, no longer walking beside us. Their lives still interwoven with ours, in another of May Sarton's words. My father gone almost 35 years, my mother almost 10. Their lives still woven into my life and into the lives of all of our family, and no doubt of friends of theirs. And woven too, indirectly, but really, into the lives of the great-grandchildren they never met, as their legacies are passed on, their lives and legacies sharing in the redemptive beauty, rosebuds of the generations. So most often nothing grand here, really. Most often nothing that ends up in the history books in our mourning without end. Most often simply the heritage, so beautiful, the heritage of life, the light and love passing from hand to hand, heart to heart, generation to generation, as I often say at the outset of a memorial service. Not all sweetness, of course, as Elaine said at the outset of our service this morning, because also it's a heritage of struggle, of mistakes, of hurt and regret and suffering. But it's all about love. All that, too, is about love. Rosebuds. Beginning as living through grief, we learn to live with our dear ones, as I've said, in our hearts and memories, inner companions now, while no longer physically at our sides. Of course, our so-called new life will always be etched with a sadness somewhere in the heart, often quite deeply etched, yet also quite likely, we may come to realize this more with time, etched with gratitude. Rosebud of gratitude for having had this person in our lives, and their gifts in our lives. Now, one more dimension before I finish this morning of continued living after loss is this, and we've already alluded to it with the words of Helen Keller, and really in the very nature of this service. We may discover anew, or for the first time, just how intimately interwoven all our lives are. Not just our family and close circles of friends. Everyone. Whether we're Christian, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist, Unitarian, Universalist, atheist, agnostic, believer, in the midst of our journey of grief, we may come to experience freshly, maybe even for the first time, more fundamental than any creed or belief in heaven or some form of afterlife, more fundamental is, it sounds like a bland word, but it isn't, community. The community of all souls, in fact. Our connectedness not only with the one we loved and our dear ones, but with all souls, everyone, the entirety of the human family, all of us living with our heart's vulnerability. A vulnerability that gifts us, it's a gift with greater compassion. Compassion for and therefore sense of connection with everyone. Our illusion of separateness may be shattered forever by the experience of grief, even though at first we may feel, as we've said, utterly alone in it, but we're not, as Helen Keller said. We live in this web of compassion and love, transcending our apparent separateness. We live, we might say, in the grace of this love. Grace, it means free gift. Free gift of what actually we always have, each other in the oneness of life. Yes, the gift of grace enfolded in our mourning, spiritual grace, opening to our human vulnerability, opening our hearts to others. We are all part of one sacred web of life. So our mourning without end is not, thankfully, living with that intensity of grief we've known or will know only too well. That does fade and become smaller with time. For most of us, that mourning does come to an end, that part of mourning. But there's also a mourning without end in this, I would say, deepened way of living in which we feel our oneness with all souls. That's why May Sarton titled her poem, All Souls. Not just the souls I love or know. Living and dead, our own dear ones, and all souls, a way of living that can make life more precious and poignantly beautiful. I'll share some of her lines again. What has been once so interwoven cannot be raveled, nor the gift ungiven. Only the strands grow richer with each loss. Listen and feel new cherished, new forgiven as the lost human voices speak through us and blend our complex love, our mourning without end. So what will it be? Denial without end? Denial of the human condition? Our heart's vulnerability? A denial which may lead us to think we've got all the time in the world to say what we want to say, to do what we want to do with our dear ones. There's always tomorrow when there might not be another opportunity, another day. Or do we want to live knowing that life is filled with both beginnings and endings? All things must pass. Knowing that we all share the reality of loss and grief. And then we can become ever more open to the surprising, if sometimes pain-filled grace, as deep, poignant flaws are transformed into rosebuds. So may it be. So it is, and may it always be. Going to invite Catherine Mays, who is at her home, to share words for the extinguishing of our flames. Catherine.
We extinguish these flames, but not the love with which they were lit. And we extinguish the flame of the child of our faith, but not the lights of freedom, truth, and the love with which it represents. We take all these qualities into our hearts and manifest them in our lives every day.
Our closing hymn or song is I'll Fly Away. The chorus, which you can kind of hum or sing quietly to yourselves here, you can sing it exuberantly at home. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, bye bye, I'll fly away. Maybe all you need to remember is I'll fly away. It comes around in some frequency. They're not actually leaving. We will hear from them in a moment. These words from a colleague I never knew, served in Cambridge, Samuel Crothers. He said, by way of benediction this morning, let the horizon of our minds include all people, the great family here on earth with us, those who have gone before and left to us the heritage of their memory and of their work. and those whose lives will be shaped by what we do or leave undone. In this spirit, may we go in peace this day and always with love, kindness, and compassion in our hearts and in our lives. Amen, and blessed be.